anyway.
Pardon me?
And they gave me the degree anyway.
Yeah,
even after all of that. So there you go.
That's funny. All right, thanks, Robyn.
Yeah, you got it. So I'm just gonna honestly piggyback a lot off of what Damo said in terms of so much about the last 2 minutes are what you're teaching your athletes in practice and then what they're comfortable with. And if you can run with those concepts, it's going to be way more effective to draw something brand new on a whiteboard in the last 2 minutes when they're all literally physically shaking and this is the most adrenaline they've ever felt in their entire bodies is a really poor decision. We've actually started this year bringing a lot of whiteboards into practice, and what we'll do is we'll have a 10-minute drill where we actually run some last 2 minute tie game practices. And it's been a really effective mechanism of we just take our whiteboard, we go into our little pseudo timeout with our 5 athletes, and we're like, you're here, and we draw it, and you'd be mind blown at the U Sports level how many athletes are like, but you drew it like this, and I was there, and I was no, you weren't there. You were never there. You were never on that block. You were on the other block the whole time. So getting them comfortable with drawing something on a whiteboard and then doing it is actually a great skill, and it's actually way more for us as coaches, we're like, well, yeah, I just drew it. It was really simple. In my mind, it was beautiful, and you guys didn't do it. Isn't that the worst feeling? So that would be the first thing. If I could give any advice, it's take your whiteboard into practice and get your athletes really comfortable with what it looks like, and time yourself at 45 seconds, right? Damo's saying, what do they hear when you're in that timeout? The first thing you say, the last thing you say, and if you have a pithy joke, they'll probably listen to that one the most, by far. So that's a big thing that we've started doing. The other thing that we've started doing, because as you will witness as I show my game tape, we miss a lot of free throws in the last 2 minutes that are really important. And so now we will do anything we can in our practice environment to replicate that. So we will put, we'll put the music on blast, or we'll find someone with banger sticks, and we'll if there's leftover banger sticks from volleyball the weekend before, we'll bring the banger sticks into practice. Just anything you can do to replicate that environment, because it is intimidating. It is something that they have to get used to. And I think, we've been super fortunate to have a sports psych come in and talk to our athletes about breathing and some strategies about, how you think when you step to the foul line in the last 2 minutes. And if you can find some ways to calm them down, it's a much more effective mechanism of, finding success in that space. I think the biggest piece is the last 2 minutes are often a lot more mistakes than successes. So try not to feel stressed. My only advice would be try not to feel stressed as a coach when something goes wrong, because the likelihood of the other team doing something wrong is really high. So that should make you feel really good. There could be lots and lots of mistakes in the last 2 minutes and you could still be successful. Unless, they make that one shot and then you're like, had him until then. So what I want to do is I have 2 different game tapes that I clipped for you guys. So one is a game that we win, one is a game that we lose. They're both 4 to 5 points in the last 2 minutes, and you can just kind of watch what we do, all the mistakes that we make, all of the excellent and not excellent coaching, and we'll try to get through it so you guys can, I want to evaluate after. So if you can, take some notes on anything that you see in the last 2 minutes from either team that you think is a positive. What do we do that reflects positively on the athletes? So myself and then Carrie, who's coaching Vic. And then anything you think that might happen that's negative. So those are the 2 big focuses. Mark, did we turn the music or the sound off? Okay. No, I'm not sure. I'm much less effective with this than I am with VLC, but I'll try to go as fast as I can. Can you guys see that at all? Mark, can we make that bigger? Can I pull this? You can? Okay. It's very whitewashed. Okay, so I will just really quickly, sorry, I know.
So
I said I was.
you guys in white.
Yeah, we're in white. Yes, is that the same question? Yeah, we're in white and Vic is in blue. So the thing, and like Damien said it really well, the thing that I would say, if there's any advice that I would give in these situations, it's like we have a couple actions that we really love to run, and of course, we try to run the same actions for the same people, and then think about which of our athletes are the best distractors. So I have an excellent shooter. She's down here in this side, ball side corner. We like to run a lot of stuff where we drive at her on actions because nobody in their right mind is helping off of her because she will make that three. So that's something for us that's like a big hot button piece. It also means that we like to run her as a screener in a lot of our stuff because people don't want to help off of her, and it often creates an opportunity to attack off of like a scramble play. So that's the biggest piece. And then we really like to drive at like big defenders because we find that they are, well, this is a generalization. It's not this case when we play UFC, but like they're often the slowest footed player on the team. So if you can drive at that person and make them indecisive, you're actually creating a bigger advantage than if you drive it a little because they have better feet. So those are things that we're like really obsessed with. Okay. Free throws. She makes them because she makes everything.
Coach, you know what's the score?
I think it is now currently a tie game. I'm quite sure because they're going to score here. Oh, we are down by 2. So the other thing that I will mention, just because it's happening right in front of us, we had a very, and like for every game, have a very extensive scout. So we're very aware of like who on the other team will do what. So part of our scout was that we were going to ice all the wing to swing ball screens, because Vic runs a lot of them that are naked. So you can see there's no one in this ball side corner, so we would call that a naked ball screen, and we are just trying to force the person who has the ball to go baseline. We don't want to let them turn the corner on this action. The other piece, and you'll notice on this pass, we also were gapping their bigs extensively because all the stats said they weren't going to shoot that jumper, and they weren't going to make them when they did shoot them. I think that depending on your level, scout can actually be like a wildly effective thing, and you all can do it in a game as effectively as we do it on Synergy for like 3 weeks straight. So I think the biggest piece is like, we always said when I was playing, that you're in the lab as an athlete and like trying to figure out what things the other person that you're guarding will do. Will they go left? Will they go right? Do they like to shoot the three? Do they have an ability to come off of an action? Because the reality is we're all humans and we have tendencies, and even though you'd love for your best player to all of a sudden become something that they're not, the reality is they're still humans. So we aggressively scout teams and then aggressively lean on our scout, especially in the last 2 minutes. That's like the biggest piece that we preach aggressively. Oh. No, I'm okay. My knees are just old. And we fouled her on that jump shot, which was in our scout. So that was a real sad moment. Okay.
You look like you guys are quite got the ice on that second ball screen?
Yeah, she did not ice it very effectively, but we get lucky here. Number 11 goes over the back, so we miss the rebound and she gets fouled out. So that's sort of like, Damien touched on it, but the last 2 minutes are so many pieces of information all together. So we were very aware at this point, their big 6'4" girl had 4, and Mimi, number 11, she also had 4. So we're very aware of like trying to attack at those players and trying to see if we can draw that 5th foul. And here I think Jen did a really good job on her box out, understanding who's who and the tendencies of that person. And this isn't exciting. She makes her free throws. The referees really struggled in this game to have any flow in the last 2 minutes, which is also something that I'm sure people have experienced. Holy moly, guys. Sorry. See, Mark, on my computer, I can go 10 seconds forward and 10 seconds back. That was also a bad scout.
Nice.
She's.
They want to go with the ball. The person with the ball really wants to go over the screen, whether you're in ice position or not, they're going to go that way.
Yeah, I think the problem for us was we really wanted them to go under the screen, so we wanted to like jump on the high side and make them snake it, because that felt like we had more help in that space. But you're right, the bigger problem is it's like it takes a one-step moment of like, oh, she's gonna go down, coach. And it's like, nope, that was the point, that was the whole point, the whole plan all weekend was to make her do that. So, okay. This is our sideline where you're down 2. Sorry?
How much time is it?
A minute 20, I think. More free throws again. So there's a stagger for you. And that's good scout defense. That's good scout defense. This is a poorly executed play that turns into like a decent look for us. Yeah, what should be happening is that it's for both bigs. So this big also should be on the elbow, and she comes across 2 screens. Our shooter goes in the corner, and then it's like an ISO for our point guard, which she never uses, or it's a DHO to ball screen. And to be fair to Vic, that's not on the scout, so.
It is now.
I guess now it should be, yeah. Maybe it is now.
There's your future wrinkle.
They're creating new wrinkles for me every day, Demo. Mostly because no one really knows what's happening. We were trying to face guard 7, which became like at with 4 minutes left, she had 2 points, and she finished with 8, and she averages 22. So that was very effective until the very end when she woke up. So that again is like poor scout, like you said, coming over that get. We'd like to yellow it, but she just gets caught too high, or sorry, soft hedge. And again, free throws. She makes both of those. You'll have to endure another So this is one that's really interesting. In this play, we ran it so that the person on the opposite side, like I drew it on the board. It was beautiful in my brain. So that the person on the opposite block would back screen, like basically a lob screen for number 10, and then she would pop to the ball side corner. Again, she's our shooter, so we like to run her screening a lot of stuff so that they can't help. But you'll see what happens here, because number 10's a rookie, so she's going to do a rookie thing. Yeah, she just totally forgot what she was supposed to be doing. Again, very lucky. I don't think that's great basketball. I think that's one player panicking about the time and score and trying to go score, so I guess he'll take that one.
And only one of the bigs is fouled out at this point, right?
Yes, only one of the bigs is fouled out. They have like 6. So sometimes there are pieces where it's like that best player will never really foul out and you just have to kind of deal with it. I thought this was an interesting wrinkle by the Vic coach. She did a really good job. We had been pressing a zone 1-2-2 press. And so at the end of the game, when she didn't want to be pressed, she came out with a 4-cross press break, which is really difficult to pressure in a zone. And we are currently down by 2, and there's 22 seconds left, so we are going to have to foul. And this is a moment of obviously bad coaching, I guess. They called that an unsportsmanlike. She was about to go try to hit the ball, and they decided that that was the foul.
The difference between on purpose and intentional.
So anything in the last 2 minutes, I don't know if you guys know this, but FIBA now has a rule. Anything, I'm mad at them. Anything in the last 2 minutes, they are going to call unsportsmanlike, and they give 2 shots and the ball. We are fighting currently with I believe we're fighting with our referee body to like make it very clear that like we are often going for the ball and confounded, right? And there are some real issues with that. I would say now, after doing this way too many times this year, the biggest smart thing you could do is just tell the ref right away, you're like, I'm gonna go foul. We didn't want to foul right away, that was the difference. We really wanted a steal and then a foul secondarily, but we kind of got confounded by that ourselves. So
Still a terrible call.
yeah. We have brought it forward to be addressed.
16 games before, they know this.
I know.
They know you're
They're like in the last 2 minutes, like we are gonna have to foul. There's 22 seconds left. Anyway, so I know. It becomes very, I understand both sides in the sense that what they're trying to do is protect athletes from just being like shoved out of bounds. But that obviously was very far from the case there. So they obviously get the ball back. We run around and can't do anything. And that is the end of that. So I'd love to know anything that we wrote down in terms of like, let's start with the positives. What were some things that we think happened that were positive in the last 2 minutes? Anything that you guys saw?
You said they didn't execute what you drew up.
Yeah.
You actually got 2 good looks on 2 to side and out. That's all you can hope for. They might not make the shot, but hopefully they get a good looking shot. So
Yeah.
the spacing was there, even though the execution wasn't there. So
Yeah, I would give our group some credit. We drew something that gave a quick option, and then when that degraded, they did a good job of continuing to move and create like the same spacing and principles that we teach and practice, and that ended up like creating some decent opportunities. So you're right, we got shots and the shots went in, or we got fouled on the shots. You can't ask for much more than that. As much as we all have beautiful ideas in our heads, the execution sometimes of said beautiful ideas is very low. Other thoughts? Anything else good that we saw?
I like how UVic used their big outside for handoffs and screens.
Yeah.
Then they didn't keep them outside the whole time. They would then dive them or roll them or post them
Yeah.
later in their offense.
Yeah.
It even seemed after their second ball screen, they would go down or something like that.
Yeah.
Just how they utilized the big out there, that it opened up the floor for the other players because they were on perimeter to start.
Yeah.
And then late in the shot clock, I guess they put them inside.
I think in that sense they did a phenomenal job of like using the entire clock. That's something that we've become very obsessed with, is like, how do you create opportunities for scoring but not force shots that aren't the best shot? Our kids are always asking, well, what do you mean? What's the best shot? When do we know it's the best shot? And so I think that's been something that we've spent a lot of time talking about. Our big three that would like tell an athlete, like, you got a green light. If you if you come off an action and you have an advantage, that's a great shot. You have a green light for that shot. If you can create an opportunity and it's like we call them dominoes. So if you're on the second or the third domino sequentially, so you've created an action that created a second action that created a third opportunity, that's a great shot. Like, so the more things we're running defenders off, or the more disturbance that we're creating, the better likelihood that that's going to be an opportunity that we can get a great score out of. And the big piece that we're always trying to teach is reading the rebounders. So we're actually talking a lot about angles of like rebounding. So we want to always be covering the block on either side and the top of the charge circle. Those are the three spots. And we'll talk a lot about, if you shoot on the right block, your hot spot is actually on the left block. So trying really hard to, like, when you're attacking, do you have someone who's crashing to come rebound for you? So that's a really great point, Mike. Any other thoughts that we saw that we thought were like positive coaching?
I think when you're in the last few minutes and you're down, you want to control time and score obviously as much as possible. And they got to the foul line 3 times. So outside of the Iverson wrinkle and the free, they're at the foul line, which is all you can ask in that moment. If you're down by 5, you have to get to the free throw line.
Yeah.
You did that, as you said, you didn't necessarily shoot so well from there, but that's the job of the offense. They did it very well.
And I think we talk about it so much in our environment now, whether or not they apply it. Being up versus being down, and just like the mentality of that. Our group really likes to be down. I don't understand it, but they thrive in that environment where they're like, we have to be really deliberate in these moments and do a good job of like executing. And I think that's been something that is funny. Like, if you brought a sports psych in, I'm sure they would tell you a million things about our team. But that's another big piece, is like, how do you play when you're down versus how do you play when you're up? So to answer some of those questions, what do you teach right now? Like, do any of us talk about the last 2 minutes? Just show of hands. Do you guys talk with your group about the last 2 minutes? A couple? Okay. So I think the biggest piece is some rules of thumb. That was something that we put together as a group. So when you are up, what are some things that we want to be trying to do? The first one is you want to speed the game up. So when you're up, you'd like to do your very best to waste all the time that's left. That's a big rule for us. Anything else that we can think of when we're up?
Running your offense, using the shot clock, like you said.
Yeah.
Incorporating a roll, maybe.
Yeah. Using the clock, using both sides of the floor if you feel like you can create those opportunities, making the defense guard.
Same thing on defense. Playing defense for 24 seconds too. Don't let them get quick shots or fouls.
Or just don't foul randomly. We do that a lot. Just random fouling. It's amazing. What other things might we talk about?
You want to run more basic, like your bread and butter type actions in the series?
Yeah. So,
the stuff that you know really well that you're not already practice well for a week of working.
yes, totally. We like to break things down as to so we have we call it our baseline action would be like your very simplistic rules of movement. Then we would have our quick hitters are our actions. So those would be your ball screens, your gets, your DHOs, your sequences of those. And then we have some very simple sets where we're taking 5 or 6 actions or movement patterns and we're combining them. So we have sort of a mix of all those things, but you're right, when we're up at the end of the game, we try to run a set all the way to the end of the action. And then when it burns out into whatever, then we would play to the end of the shot clock. But that's the real big thing, is that we've given them some structure in that space to feel comfortable. So we have a couple sets that we would run when we're up, where it's like, we're wasting the clock. Don't shoot it fast. So that's a great point.
When do you go into your shot, like, so you're wasting all that time?
Yeah.
So when do your players know to initiate to attack for that last shot at the end of that shot clock?
We like to use 10 as a good rule of thumb. The biggest part, and I've noticed this about younger athletes, is like 10 is like the panic moment. 10 means like, oh, throw the ball. But it's not a panic moment. It's actually a really great time in the shot clock to get to. So we tell them when we are up at the end of a game, we want to get to 10. We want to hear that like bench calling 10. And then we are running an action that's specific to that person with the ball. Generally, we'd like to get the ball back to a scorer or like one or two people. And we have different plays for different people. So I have a point guard who really likes to come off a ball screen, but I have like two guards who are like, don't set a ball screen for me, no way, I want only gets. So we like to talk a lot about like knowing your teammates and understanding where people score. There's a lot of like averages in that space, and we want to try to create those options.
Initiate that final action to score at about 10 seconds.
Yeah. So in that moment, like, we would love to get the ball. I mean, honestly, what's kind of funny is we really try to put the ball in like one of 3 or 4 places and then just kind of let someone play. But we really like to create an opportunity for that player specifically. Does that make sense? Okay. Anything else we can think of at like the end of the game when you're up that you guys would emphasize?
Dead ball turnovers are better than live ball turnovers.
That's like, is that written somewhere very important? Because we talk about it nonstop. We have a rule, boot it out of bounds. Eat it. Eat it. If you turn it over in the last 2 minutes, it had better be out of bounds. Because the worst possible thing that you can do is create any opportunity for the ref to make a choice. Like, they're just guessing sometimes, and we are like, just throw it out of bounds. We get to set up our defense. Great things happen from that space. Anything else we can think of?
Are you putting the ball in your better free throw players?
Yeah, so we, for sure, like when we know they're coming to foul, we will basically, I like to have my point guard inbound the ball a lot, but instead we'll actually flip our personnel, have our 2 guard inbound the ball to the 1, and then it's like, we play the game called Run Away. And I'll literally just yell from the sideline, like, run away! It's very literal. It's an amazing game. It's very effective if they listen. But I think what's funny is, like, we practice that because they'll get in that moment and they're like, what? Run away? And just like turtle. So I'm like, no, run away. That means like move away from the defenders. So that's a really great point, is who's getting the ball in that moment and who's getting to make those decisions. Anything else we can think of? Don't foul. One thing that we have, like, we toy with a lot is like when to use your timeouts when you're up, whether you would like to, like, so if you feel like there's a swing going in the other direction, do you choose to use that timeout, which then gives the other coach a timeout, an opportunity to talk to their team? And then I think the biggest question for everybody in FIBA right now is, if you take a timeout with 22 seconds left and you're up, do you take it in the backcourt or the front court? I've done both now and done like the same thing 2 nights in a row and won one and lost the next. So I'm not going to be able to tell you what the answer is, but I think like the biggest question to answer for yourself is, I always like to just like look at my group, and if there's any sort of consensus of panic or nervous or anything, I'm like, we're advancing it. We'll eat the time that we lose because I know that my athletes are feeling less confident, especially based on what's happened in the last like play or 2 plays. So that's a big read for me, but again, like I can't really give you a perfect answer because I think it's very dependent on your group. If you have a group that's very stoic under pressure, I would say take it in the backcourt because you know that you're going to have no problem getting it over half, but every group is different. it's honestly, like, so in this game, Carrie did not advance it. She had the ball back with 22 seconds, and she left it in the backcourt. But she did an incredible job because she knew what our press would look like. And so she just ran a breaker that was really hard for us to press. So I thought that was exceptionally clever coaching.
When you're defending someone that's coming out of the timeout, how do you defend that? Like, because you don't know if they're taking in the back or the front. Do you more tend to be concerned about the front closest to the basket?
Honestly, I will guess based on what I would do. That sounds really weird. So like we talked about her taking it like full court, right? Because there's 22 seconds and she's up by 2. So I figured that's what would happen. And then we talked about like for 2 seconds what would happen if she took it to the front court. So we had options for both, but I feel like it comes back to Damo's point about what you can say in a timeout and how much they'll take. You've got to put your eggs somewhere. So pick a basket and just go with it, because at the end of the day, if you pick the wrong basket, at least you gave them something. But I am really liberal. I love to use different zones, different actions. I like to switch defenses in the middle of possessions. Like, I am very junky like that. So I think that's part of the fun of basketball, is that there's no rules. You can just make it up as you go. So we will do some weird stuff like that sometimes too. At the end of the game, if we're feeling like they have great flow against our man, we will like switch to something really wild. So
I think that if you're defending that scenario, you've got the foul discussion. That's the part you're down. So you're advising them if there's no timeouts left, if the possession's unchanging, this is a live possession. It's the potential of them to have a full 22 seconds. And you've got to make decisions on, do we have fouls to give to get to a point where we can send it to the foul line? Who are we fouling? And as Robyn says, in the scout, there'll be the worst free throw shooters to the best free throw shooters. If you can somehow get it in their hands, does that mean you trap something to get it into someone else's? You can control the fouling. If you're playing a game where you're down, I personally would go full court and use the clock, because now the other coach has to foul me. Our job is to have the right personnel on the floor so that it doesn't matter who they foul. But that's the roulette of basketball. Right? I want to finish with the last offense, but they're obviously going to foul you.
yeah, sometimes it's really tricky if you feel like you have, like, I don't know. I have some athletes where I will play them offense, defense. So if we get the chance, like, we'll switch someone out for a defensive possession, but then what happens is if they're still on the floor in that offensive half, that you get into a place where you're like, hey, well, we're not running anything for you and you shouldn't touch the ball, right? So those pieces can come into consideration as well. Just really knowing your own personnel, and then honestly, like the athletes knowing their own personnel. They have to know their teammates well enough to be like, I'm not giving so-and-so the ball in the corner down there and letting them figure it out, because that is literally the worst turnover possible. And I think sometimes what happens again in the late games is that there's just this panic. So anything you can do to make it feel more normal is going to decrease the level of panic that you're going to see. Okay, so flipping it to down, what do you guys, anything that we can think of that would be like a big topic? The foul conversation is always paramount in my mind, especially when we have athletes who have fouls. So we're often like talking about like who has how many fouls. We'll try to do that after every timeout late in the second half, just being really aware, because we'd like to keep our best players on the floor as much as possible. Often what I'll do is, if it's like late in the game and it's my second timeout, I'll warn them, I'll tell them when I'm taking my next timeout, so they can like take as much information for that next chunk of time that they need, and then they know they're coming back in to talk if X, Y, or Z happens. And then I'll also warn them when I'm out of timeouts, because then it's like, okay, you guys have to do this, this, and this, and we won't have a chance to talk if things go in the way that we don't want. So Anything else?
Did you find in your scout when the persons that were guarding the ball screens, like you had them off, your bigs off?
Yep.
Because they wouldn't shoot the ball at all.
That.
But did you find though when that player rolled, because they got some roll action, that because the player was so far off, gapping or whatever, that they weren't on the balls of their feet and they weren't active as much on those rolls? Like, is that how they got open?
Our scout.
They were there.
Yeah.
It's just the ball got through.
Our scout was to allow, like, we watch a lot of games and they scored very poorly on post-up action. We have nice synergy numbers that tell us all of this. I didn't have to watch a lot to know that. So we just said, like, when they roll and post you, you just stand behind and be as long as you can. We knew tendencies about going right or left. And, like, there was one where she goes left. She didn't go left the entire year until that moment. So it's like, when she makes that one, that's all good by us. We've done everything we can in our power. We're more worried. Our rule of thumb always is, like, let them beat us in a way that is outside of their skill set, and we will be fine with that. But everybody goes back to their skill set. That's life. We all have tendencies. And so, I think even when coaching really young kids, it's really great to watch tendencies be used at that level. This past summer, I coached some U14, and everything we did was force left, and it's wild. So effective. And I think that's just like, that's the beginning of Scout. And I think teaching kids to learn that, teaching young athletes to think about those pieces. This person's a 3-point shooter, but if they have to do anything more, they travel. That sort of thing. I think that stuff goes a long way in terms of, like, thinking the basketball game, right? It's like a lot of kids are just running around and doing, but how many of them start getting clever at a young age?
When you guys picked up and they ran that 4 across, it looked like, you said it was zone pressure, but it looked like you guys were in back.
We were trying to zone press, but our zone press is, like, it's not super effective against the 4 across. We're supposed to match and then drop, but it's super hard to do.
Did you guys drop back to man out of that?
Yes, yeah, we did out of that, yeah.
So I guess I would say, I'm curious there, how come there wasn't more sort of effort to get a trap or a turnover earlier?
I wish my athletes were that good.
Like in the backcourt at least, because they did.
Yeah.
In the backcourt and then it was on the bounce, right?
I think they did a good job. The person who was being guarded by my worst guard defender was on the ball side, and she will foul you, and she knows not to foul in that context. So I think she was doing the panic, I don't want to foul, and then didn't come to trap. So yeah, it is an interesting piece where when someone uses all your flaws very effectively, you're like, I'd hidden those so well until this moment. So I think that's where it can be, like, fun in a sense, like the chess of basketball will show up and you can be really clever about who you're putting in what spot, and who you're making defend what spot. We talk a lot about the other team's best defender on ball and how we can run our action, like, effectively away from them, because we like to create opportunities that would be like driving at someone who's a weaker defender. They just create better opportunities to draw a foul. So we do a lot of that. We love to go enter our offense into the left side so we can come off of actions going right, because I think that creates a lot of opportunities for us. So I think, like, thinking about those little pieces, it seems so trivial, but it actually will create a lot of super effective movement for you later on. So that's another piece to come back to. Okay, sorry.
Would you agree at a younger age to force who we can, like, defensively?
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's,
Just as a general rule of your team?
yeah, yes, I would do it all the time because it's so effective. And the reality is it's not zoning. So you're not, like, everybody complains that zone, like, you're not teaching the principles of man-to-man defense, but you're still teaching the principles. You're just teaching kids about tendencies. And I think tendencies are a big part of basketball. So I would teach it. I would massively force left at younger ages.
So, like, Dave Smart teaches that at
Yep.
Carleton, and they've had unbelievable success.
Yes.
And yet, I don't know, at youth level, players are not good at going to their weekends. So.
Yeah.
The
No.
interesting thing about Dave Smart, when you hear his interviews, he not forcing left. He has everyone's tendencies. It just happens to be that most times that approach is forcing them to pass with their left hand after dribble decision. That's it.
Or we can.
Yes, or weekend, which happens to be the 98% of the people population left, but they're not always physically forcing left, which is it's manifested itself into something else. But I agree with Robyn at the junior level. I think forcing left and keeping everything on the left-hand side is a really good idea. But Carlton's is the next level because literally every single player is scouted to the point that Robyn is suggesting as well, because it might be actually be forced right.
Okay, that's the general consensus of where I was going to go, Mark. So it's all you. Do we have questions? I guess is the biggest.
I'm curious about the UBC end of the game.
Oh, we won that one. I can play it. Okay. So we're down 4 right now. So there's a dead ball turnover for you. Or jump ball. So you can see we're guarding very different on ball screens in this game. No, she's right-handed. Yeah. Awful pass. Awful, disgusting pass. And we just run back into man out of it. She's a rookie. So I would be yelling at her right there to eat it. If she needs to turn that over, it needs to be a dead ball turnover and not a turnover under their basket or under our own basket, right? And I probably say that to her like right now. I often find, and like I think Damien's point is very pertinent to me, I love to make jokes or like tease them at some moment when we are in a close game. You have to make them laugh because everybody in that circle feels so like tense. Anything, like my jokes are all really bad. I tell dad jokes like they're going out of style. So that's my go-to, and the girls know to expect it. But I think anything that can just make them go, whew, it's just basketball. I think too, like I'll commend our athletes in this space. Like they did a great job with like all the scramble plays, like everything that's a scramble ball, like they're all over it, which is a super important part of the end of the game. There's another missed free throw for you. So our scout in this weekend was that UBC doesn't make great decisions when they're pressured. So as you can see, we're not slumping on ball screen or get action. We're like basically all over them, trapping them. And it was really effective.
22 seconds left right now.
Yeah, 22 seconds. Roughly.
Advanced it.
Yeah. Yeah. We are, it's a tie game. I'm just never.
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know about that call. I yelled at my point guard for dribbling into the corner. But this is a moment, like Damien said it, you need to know the other team's best free throw shooters. I know my best free throw shooter, and like I want the ball in her hands. Because she's now done this for us twice this year. Made 2 free throws with very little time left to go up. So I feel very confident with her, and I don't know. I think it's like you put your chips where they are, and then you take your hands out and you do the best you can, and that's how I feel with Jamie.
She did that intentionally, tried to draw a foul.
Yeah, she's like trying to go at the rim, and she knows she's a very, very smart basketball player. I think this one runs out, and we have to go to the second. She knows what she's supposed to be doing in that space. We do spend a lot of time drilling it. We spend a lot of time in practice talking about the last 2 minutes. We have a lot of, I think now we're at 6 games for sure this year that have been finished in the last 2 minutes. That's great D. All our scout on her was that she can't go left. And number 10 made her shoot a reverse layup, which is totally within our scout. The other thing, which you'll notice, and it's a little bit hokey of us, but we're really obsessed with like getting touches in that last 2 minutes and like really connecting. We talk a lot about it just to try to be on the same page, and then we talk a lot about getting tips. So anything that we can do to try and slow the path of the ball or just like frustrate the other team. So you see Kiara there gets a tip in the corner. That's, I think, a very frustrating thing offensively when you're like, we're going to run this action. And it's like, oh, it gets tipped out of bounds. Oh, we have to run it again. We have to start over, right? Like there's so much frustration that happens from that. And you know what's funny is she hits that shot, everybody feels a whole lot different about the end of the game. But that's it. They don't even foul us.
Touches as in like contacts between teammates to stay connected.
Yeah, like any moment where, oops. Woo, sorry, Reagan. Any moment where we can get a high five or like a point at to be like, I got you, like thanks. Good connect.
I thought it was good after the missed free throws, the first missed free throw, all the teammates rallied to that player and
Yeah.
made sure she had good energy. She missed, I think she missed the second.
She missed the both, yeah. But I think it's like there's something, we can't explain that, right? There's something where you're just like, I feel awful already for missing the first free throw. And like, you've got to be able to move on so quickly. So we talk a lot about like our body language and how we're reacting to those like things that don't go our way, because there's going to be so many things in the span of a game that don't go your way. So we're very, very intentional about just like teaching those things. Like you can only hold them accountable to so many things, but we hold them accountable to that aggressively because we believe that it will just give us opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise.
To her credit, afterwards in the ball screen, she defended really well right after that. So.
she's a pretty resilient kid. She's also a fourth year, which is helpful. Yeah. So, any questions? I recognize that's probably just a lot of noise, but yeah. Yeah, no problem.
Jordan and Mike, let's move this out of the way and then we'll get you going here right away. You need a table?